Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to another exciting episode of Let's Talk Comics. I am your host, Jim Viscardi, and this is the official Image Comics podcast where we go one-on-one with your favorite creators in the business to find out how they got in, why they got in, what they're still doing in comics, and what they've got coming up. I don't even know why I tried to tease who the guest is at the very end, so I'm just going to say it more up front because you see the album art, you see the episode title, you know exactly what you're getting into when you press play on this episode of or any episode of the show. My guest today, Tony Fleecs. Tony is such a fun person to talk to, because if you've been paying attention to Tony's career over the last few years, you've watched his career shift in really interesting ways. He's done the licensed work for hire grind. He had a massive hit with Stray Dogs. Local Man is one of my favorite top 10 hands down books of all time. And which then led to Feral, and then obviously, he continues to do other work for hire work elsewhere. But if you ask Tony, his heart is in creator-owned comics, making his own stuff. And quite honestly, I think one of the things I love about Tony's stuff is Tony, like myself, is a diehard 90s comics kid. He and I say that because it's not. I mean, obviously, if you've read Local Man, you know that it's basically, him and Tim Seeley's love letter to that stuff. But I think the more interesting piece of that is how Tony's love of that era really affects his outlook on how he approaches the business. Everything from storytelling to marketing and things like that, right? All come into play anytime Tony is starting on a new project. Not only that, Tony's work also has a ton of heart to it, even when he's doing truly terrible things. So all the cats in Feral. And Feral is the reason we are here today. Feral hits a very special issue coming up, Feral 21. It is a totally silent issue. It is in a homage in a way to the G.I. Joe silent issue. But it's more than that, right? This is a book that only Tony can do with his creator-owned stuff. And we're not going to spoil here what exactly it is, but we are going to talk about it. We're going to talk about why now is the time to do it. We're going to talk about why, what led us to this point, what makes it so special, and what makes it even more so, what makes it fulfilling for Tony to kind of get up to this point and do with everything that he's done. So I hope you enjoy the show. It is a lot of good fun. I think you get a lot of really great insight here. The business. If you want to support the show, please leave a review on iTunes, leave a comment on Spotify, take a picture if you're on your phone of the episode and share it anywhere. Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, whatever, doesn't matter. Tag us, tag me, tag Tony, Image. We will share it. If you're ready, I'm ready. Let's talk comics. Tony, welcome.
Very happy to be here. I am a longtime fan of the show, not just the Image Comics version, but from even the way before times. I probably have heard every episode. When you're, I'm mostly a writer now, but when you're an artist and when you're drawing, you have a lot of time where you need sound in your ears, and you were that sound in my ears a lot of times.
Oh, I appreciate that.
But this is surreal for me.
Hey, I love that we were able to make it. Man, it's so interesting. I fully intended to go back and try some of the audio in those early ones are just they're terrible. And I tried to I thought to myself, I'll go in and fix some of them for some of the people who I still talk to or whatever. And then I actually listened to them and I was like, God, these are awful. Which I imagine how most people feel looking back at their own older work. I mean, I'm sure they're fine and people would listen to them, but I have lived it feels like I have lived an entire life since then. And hopefully I've gotten
definitely
better.
Had a couple careers since then.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
Anyway, Tony, First question, gotta ask everyone, is there an alternate reality where Tony Fleecs was a grocery bagger, or was comics always the goal?
From pretty early on, when I was in school, it was always stuff that was artistic.
Okay.
My dad was a music teacher, and so I was a choir boy when I was a kid. So there was a lot where it looked like I was either gonna draw or I was gonna be a singer, but I always had a body like this, and so I was like, I'm not gonna be like an opera singer. There's already, like Joey Fatone from NSYNC wasn't even really in the picture then, so didn't even have anyone I could look to as like someone that I saw doing that.
Right.
But
There
a
was no,
lot of
yeah.
comic book artists were shaped like me, uh, and I was like, I know I could probably make
Yeah.
that. That seemed more this job that seems impossible to get seemed less impossible than
Mhm.
making a living as a singer.
So was there school for you after high school, or did you like what did you do? Like what did you do kind of in that period
Yeah,
before?
I went almost immediately. I started like summer semester to an art school, like an Art Institute International, the scam ones that are shut down now. It was like a 2-year program. I went for animation, um, and then sort of figured out while I was there, and then definitely figured out when I was trying to find work right afterwards, because this is like 1999, and I was in Colorado, which was not a booming animation town at that point. I don't know if it is now, but it definitely wasn't then. And so I was applying to a lot of jobs, in the surrounding areas, and there really wasn't anything. And so I sort of I got a job as a graphic designer at a TV station, and I did that for 6 years. And then while I was doing that was when I realized, like, all right, well, I don't think it's animation, but I love comics, and it was a real creative time in comics.
Mhm.
It was it was like message boards, and everybody on those message boards was sort of making their own stuff, and independent comics were at that time were like, it was like, for me it was like Powers, and
Mhm.
trying to think what other independent stuff was really big at that time for me. But Powers was the big one. I was on the Bendis message board, and that he had a really um active like aspiring creator contingent of that message board. People were always posting up like their stuff they were working on, and it was right at the dawn of print on demand.
Right.
Uh, so people could make something, and then it would actually be a comic, and it wouldn't cost $10,000 like it cost Kevin Eastman. It would cost like $350.
Right. What like, I mean, I know you've said before, and it's very clear obviously in Local Man, but like that you were a child of the 90s, all those 90s comics you loved. Is that
90s Image Comics
90s Image
specifically.
Comics, right? Yeah, specifically. Yeah, you are as tried and true an Image fan slash creator as anyone else I've spoken to. Like this is but like, so like, is that kind of where you saw like your art? Like, was your early art style kind of in that vein, or because you went to animation school?
Yeah.
Like, was it like super different? Like, what were some early Tony Fleecs comics like?
I wanted it to be in that vein, and I have early Tony Fleecs comics that have that are just straight Rob Liefeld rips, like where I'm just like, I could tell you what panel in Youngblood #0 I ripped off for this, or something from X Force, and I would do those for like school projects. When I was in high school, anytime that I would get an opportunity to draw instead of do something else,
Hmm.
I would sort of like try and take any assignment and be like, "Could I draw this instead?"
Sure.
And that worked out pretty well for me. So I have like, English projects or history projects that are covered in swipes of Rob Liefeld and like, Matt Michaels and stuff.
I would love to
Uh,
know what a math project in Liefeld style.
no,
is really
geography. Um, but uh, hold on, I'm trying to get
Sorry, I
back.
totally threw you off. So your style, like,
Oh yeah, my
you were
style.
this, yeah.
Yeah, I I could never get there. Like I would get close to that, but I was also very influenced by like Disney cartoons
Right.
and cartoons on TV and even newspaper comic strips and stuff, Mad Magazine. And so that was sort of what my natural style was like. And we would even there was like this cartooning school that they had in Colorado Springs where I grew up called the Ink Spinner, and I would go there and take like comic book classes, and they would have real comic book artists come in and do like seminars. So like John Romita Jr. came through and did like a full, it's like an hour long, like a couple hours long, like more than a panel, less than like a actual college course or something. But uh, they would teach us how to draw, and J. Scott Campbell came through at the peak of gender.
Oh, okay.
That was my favorite. That like it was like if a kid today, if they're like somebody's coming to school and they're going to teach you how to draw and it's Nick Dragotta, you just be like, you kidding me? The
Right.
biggest artist in comics is coming to my little tiny cartoon school. But yeah, that was huge for me, and I remember bringing him my work where I was trying to draw like what I thought Image Comics looked like, and it
Mm.
was garbage. Like it was pure trash. But when I hold on a second. Yes, Baxter. Sorry,
No, you're good.
my guy. Uh, when I got into animation school and I started drawing more like what my natural style felt like, and I sort of got like slightly more confident in that. I, that's when I started to become like my own artist and a better artist, and developed. I always describe my style as not being like something that I aimed for, but just sort of like as good as I can do at the time that I'm doing
Right.
it.
When was there like an aha moment for you in the early parts of your career where you felt like, okay, I think I'm there enough to make a go at it? Or is it one of those things where you never feel ready and you just keep throwing pitches and portfolios out into the ether, waiting for someone to call?
I think it's more the latter. But there were certain points where, like the point where I was making my full living as as a comic book artist,
Mhm.
that was a point where I was like, okay, this feels, comfortable. Where I'm just like, I'm not trying to break in. I'm not every day like hoping I can get a job doing X, Y, or Z or whatever. Like that was a pretty that was a spot where I felt like I'm heading in the right direction. And then it wasn't even really an aha moment, but I worked in a studio. It originally was at Tone Rodriguez's garage, and it would be like Tone Rodriguez, me, Chris Moreno, who did sidekicks at Image a ton of years ago, and eventually it ended up being Chris Burnham too, and Dennis Culver, and Drew Johnson, and we would all just go in there and draw or work on whatever we were working on. And when Dennis joined the studio, he was doing his jobs, and then
Okay.
he was also putting together his creator own stuff. And at that point, I had probably done 40, 43 issues of My Little Pony,
Mhm.
In a row for the past however many 7 years. And I've got so into the grind of like making work and making a living and being in comics and, hitting deadlines that I forgot like, oh, I'm also supposed to be all my heroes, my Image Comics guys had all like gotten to a certain point, and then we're like, all right, now I'm going to make my own thing and do my own thing. And I think for me, it was just like I hadn't felt like I was at a certain point yet. Like I,
Sure.
I didn't have like a Spider-Man #1 that had sold 8 million copies, or you know, and so I hadn't made that leap. But I saw my buddy Dennis just making his own creator-owned comics the same way I had been
Mhm.
doing, before I broke in. And I was like, "Oh, right, I have this notebook with these ideas and these things, and I
Right.
should just go ahead and start making them."
I do want to ask about just one or two questions on the pony years, because I like that's uh it's a gig that you kind of broke in with, but also learned a whole ton on.
For sure.
And like what would you say were maybe some of the more formative lessons that you learned doing that like you still kind of carry with you today? Because
Yeah.
you know,
Uh,
they were that
a lot of
important.
storytelling stuff, and it's a lot of, like, working with different writers,
Mm,
I think made me a better writer and a better writer for artists, um, because I would work with, all the different writers who wrote for that book,
right.
but sometimes I would work with writers who were also artists, and they would have, just have a better understanding of, like, I wouldn't run into any problems when I'm drawing those pages, like, I would never go
Okay.
like, "Well, how is this supposed to happen if this just happened?" Or,
Mhm.
like, the example people always give is, like, he opens the door and walks into the room as a panel, and you're like, "Well, which are we showing?" Like, you have to decide, and if it's important that both things are shown, then you have to break it into a couple panels, or you have to figure something out.
Right.
None of that stuff would happen when it was a writer who also drew comics or who also did their own stuff. And
Mhm.
so, um, that really made me, uh, think about, when I'm putting together scripts and when I'm putting together, layouts or whatever for other people, like how to make it as how to make the storytelling as clear as possible in my pages, and how to really get the most out of a page, by sometimes putting less on the page, or
Mhm.
choosing which pages to put more on, or using it for rhythm. Like, it was just all real nuts and bolts storytelling stuff. And then the other part of it was, which, I'm worse at this past month or two, but I really learned about hitting deadlines, and
Mm.
like, just getting a thing in on time, because I was in the middle of this process where, um, I hate to ever put anybody out or make anybody, do extra work on my account, or, I have a I'm like one of those people that, like, gets all the way out of the way if somebody's coming down my aisle at the grocery store.
Yeah.
And, and so hitting deadlines wasn't just, like, for my own work, it was like, well, the colorist needs to get in there, and I don't want her to
Mhm.
have to pull all-nighters or whatever. And
Mhm.
so I got pretty good at just, like, waking up, getting on a page, and putting it together. And same with covers, and everything else. And learning how to put a cover together, because on those, I would do everything, pencils and inks and colors, and sometimes design. And that stuff served me super well on, especially when we got to Stray Dogs, and it would end up being like, "We're doing another printing, we need a cover, but, by 2 days from now," or whatever. And I
Right.
would always just be like, "Yeah, we can do that."
Yeah.
You know?
What, as I'd love to linger on that a little bit. Like, what in your mind makes a great cover? And it's so I'm really curious because just what we were talking about earlier, right? Like, to me, the 90s has some of the best covers,
Yes.
period. Right. And so I have and I can and like I think if folks know how much you are a 90s kid, I think you can see that in some of your stuff. But what do you think makes those covers so great? And what are the things that you try and take from those that that you think still works today?
I mean, it's it's not helpful, but it's just like it should feel iconic, like, and not iconic in like a hyperbole sort of way, but just sort of like when you look at it, you go like, "That's the thing that I'm buying," like, for us, like Stray Dogs #1, that when you see that image, it's just a frightened dog walking through a doorway with just, like, blood red behind them, and you see the style that the dog's drawn in, and you see like, you see the mystery of it, and it just should feel like when you look at it, like, I get a exact feeling of what this thing is that we're looking at. And it's easier to do when it's, something like that, where it's like there's 5 issues,
Mhm.
so I gotta do that 5 times. It gets much harder, where we're at now, or on Local Man, where these were ongoing series, and, you get to issue, 17 or something, and you're just like, "Alright, well, how do I make the cats look afraid this month?" Like,
Right.
what are they afraid of in this image? And how do you draw it differently? How do
Ooh,
you
hold on.
not
I think
repeat
I lost it.
yourself? And, um, I, I see some books, where they've sort of chosen a theme or a motif, and the covers end up looking the same. And sometimes my covers will look the same, like, from month to month, and I really try to, even zoom in, zoom out, like, if last month I did close up, this month I wanna do, like, a wider shot, or, sometimes do something that has more, like, landscape in it, like, has more, like of the location, that type
Mhm.
of stuff, just so that, so people, when they see it, they don't go like, "Did I already get that one?"
Nice. I do. I want to talk. I want to talk about Local Man first
Yeah.
because I think the Stray Dogs into Feral is too natural of a transition there.
Yeah.
But you know, I think that's a book that I felt in those early issues really started to gain momentum because I think people at first thought it was just going to be like a 90s throwback and then realized, oh, there's there's a lot of heart in this book.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about what how you and Tim kind of put the pitch together for this and what you were hoping inevitably at the end of the day, for however long it went for, you wanted to get across with that book? And do you feel you did that?
Yeah, I feel like we did. I mean, we definitely have a lot more that we wanted to say and that we may someday say, but like, I do feel like, in those 16 issues that we did, that it's sort of the spirit of what we were trying to say about, you know, uh, people and about regret and about, feeling like you didn't reach your potential and all that type of stuff. Like, I feel like that's in there, to a certain extent. Um, when we were putting it together, it started off, not as deep as that. Like, it started off more just sort of like a genre mashup, let's, the thing that we said was, let's do like a 90s Vertigo crime thing with like a 90s Image superhero thing, and, and, and figure out how to make that. And then the more we started talking about it, it became, well, if we're going to do it at Image, and we didn't know that we were going to do it, it wasn't a pitch that was accepted. It was just, we were just putting it together. But if we're going to do it there, we should do it as a flip book, like Youngblood #1 and 2 and 3, and a bunch of those early Image books were. Um, and then we can, Tim could do that 90s style, like he could draw in a approximate 1990s Image comic style. That's sort of like his natural style, and it's not my natural style. But I had done a few like illustration projects and storyboard projects in this sort of more photo ref style, where I would go take actual photos of people, and I could do like a poor man's Alex Maleev, or like a like a poor Andrea Sorrentino or something. I would always try, and instead of trying to ape them, I would just try and ape Al Williamson, which is, I assume, who they were trying to ape, and then we just hopefully meet somewhere in the middle. But putting it together was like, we have all these things. We're gonna do this genre mashup thing. You can draw like this, I can draw it like this. We started coming up with, Tim had all the character designs, where we started coming up with like who those are and how they fit together. And then it wasn't really until, and we wrote about this in the back of I think the last issue, but it was when we were trying to figure out like what it's about, what does this hang on? And at first we were sort of talking about like, the 90s were cool, and we were sort of thinking like, it's about like, it's not necessarily cool to do the right thing, not cool to be a good guy, which is sort of in there. But it didn't really all sort of solidify and come together until we realized that like, this was during COVID. There was so much like sadness and so much like uncertainty, and I had just gotten divorced, and Tim had recently gone through one. At this time, I think Valentina was around, so like he had, like was remarried and had a kid, so he was a little further out from it. But that feeling of failure and disappointment and loss was sort of like really bubbling in whatever I wanted to make. And it was like, if we could tap into that and make it about how this guy was sort of like, had this idea of what his life was going to be,
Mhm.
and then fucked it all up, and then now he's, starting over. Worst case scenario for both of us was like, if everything goes wrong and we have to move into our parents' basement, which I understand is like not the worst case scenario in the world, like people have it much than that, but like that for us was like, that's something that feels rich for, conflict, and putting somebody in a place where, not only have you disappointed yourself, but he's disappointed this whole small town that he's come from. And Tim came from a very small town, and I grew up in small towns. And so then it was about like uh the small towns that you see on TV when it's like there's sort of like Mayberry. We didn't want to do
Right.
that so much as we wanted to do like people go like uh I drove back to uh Colorado for Christmas one year, and I had uh my I drove my car, so I had California plates, and I stopped at a 7-Eleven to grab whatever. And a guy coming out, old man coming out of the store as I was coming in, was like, "California?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Go on back." I was like, "That's the energy we want to be in this thing. That's the guy. These are the townspeople that we want this guy to be interacting with. Who like this guy went and thought he was big time, and now he's around those people."
Uh, so was as you and Tim were just kind of breaking issues out, did they just inevitably become full on therapy sessions for you, or like how much do you guys feel, you know, right? Like you talked about like what the initial original thesis of the book was, but then as you guys you know started to do homework and really break it down or whatever, like is Jack a cautionary tale?
No, I don't. I mean, I think Jack is sort of he's local man, like he's sort of
Right.
everybody has that thing that if they look back on their life, they go like, I could have done this better,
Mhm.
or I thought I was going to be this and I ended up in a different place, and I can pinpoint where to go to if I would have done something differently. Things could have gone better. So not so much a cautionary tale as he should be like like an everyman.
Right.
Just we made him shittier than most of them. Like
Right.
it's more interesting to write if he, makes the wrong decisions all the time.
Sure.
Um,
Uh, well, so then does the series have you kind of looking back at that era differently now? Like do you feel
of
you
that when you're making
understand
it, you
those books?
mean?
Well, no, I just mean like the 90s books that kind of were the inspiration for this. Like do you now look at those books a little differently having done the exercise
Yeah, I
of
hope
Local Man?
that other people look at them a little differently. That was sort of what
Mm,
besides the premise of it, the point of it
right.
was like, let's take these books that I loved, that Tim loved, you know, Youngblood and Wildcats and Spawn and Cyberforce, and treat them the same way that Frank Miller treated Silver Age Dick Sprang Batman comics, where it's like this stuff happened and it's silly, but 20 years later, these people look back on it and they remember it being very real for them. And so hopefully that, the way that all, you know, sequential periodical superhero comics, go on and sort of build and grow. And, some of these got left behind, like Brigade only pops up every once in a while. But,
Right.
when we mention Brigade, people should, in the real world now that are reading that, should be like, oh yeah, that was a real thing that happened in the Image Comic universe in 1993. Like that's something that these people would remember. So yeah, we don't really think about it that differently, but hopefully the context of our comic makes changes a little bit of makes it all feel real.
So but then for like the flip book side of it, um was writing sincere 90s comics harder?
No, it's funny. Tim and I have come to this from two different angles, because the way we would make Local Man is Tim and I would come up with a uh, outline together, like not even
Okay.
like a page by page breakdown, but like a plot. Here's what happens in this issue. It should have this, and then it should have this, and then it should have this. And I'm sorry if my dog clacking around is making trouble for you.
It's all good.
Um, but then Tim would write a draft, and then I would go through and take a pass, and then I would show it to him, and then I just start drawing it.
Mhm.
And Tim can really crank on first drafts, and so that's how the system ended up going. That's like the assembly line that we set up. Um, but on the Image side, I would just not take a pass. I would just be like, whatever, it's fine. Like that's the point of it. was that they were cranking so fast and they were just knocking stuff out, and so, to labor over them too much would,
Right.
would sort of ruin the fun of it. There's a couple times there's the issue where we show Jack and Neon hook up for the first time. He goes hunting with Camo
Mhm.
Crusader, and we realize that he can't use a bow and arrow and stuff. Like, that one, we did a little more, like, polishing on, but for the most part, it was just like, "This is perfect, go for it." And so I've described it like that before, and then Tim will be like, "Oh, no, I worked extra hard on those. I was trying to make those as good as possible." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, of course."
Uh, do you and Tim now have like a basically a shorthand with one another when it comes to working together, or is it
Yeah.
uh and like what is that? Does that make it? I think people would assume it makes it easier, but does it, or are there things sometimes where you may take some shortcuts and realize, oh, no, that's not exactly what I meant, kind of
No,
thing.
we have a real good, we fit together, we collaborate really well,
Mm,
and it's because and it's similar with Trish and Tone and Brad on the Feral and Stray Dogs, but Tim and I are both, uh, workaholics. Like, we both just crank and go hard, constantly, and so that works great for me because I'll be up at 3 a.m. and I'll go like, "Oh, we need to fix this," or we need a panel that looks like this," or, and send it over on the Dropbox, and then when I wake up the next day, it'll just be there, and
yeah.
that was and so, like, there were times when, like, when we were working together on the exact same page, like on Local Man Gold, and a few other times where it would be like our characters would be appearing on the same pages together, where we were just sending stuff back and forth, through Dropbox, and, and I would just go to sleep, and then I'd wake up, and there would just be finished pages there,
Mm.
and so that, like, that's, uh the most visible version of it, but that's how all the rest of it is too, like, he'll send a script over, and then as soon as I can get to it, I get to it and take my pass on it, and then I send it back, and we work very, very closely together. We're working on a new thing, and it's even more collaborative than Local Man was. Like, on that one, we were both just sort of like tackling our sides, and this one, it's almost like we're, like, I do the layouts, he does the pencils and inks, and I do the letters. It just sort of gets passed back and forth between us the whole time, like a volley.
That's cool. Um, Local Man got a ton of critical acclaim.
Yeah.
Uh, Showed up on a bunch of lists. Everyone loved it. Award nominations, and all that jazz. Did did seeing that, or receiving that kind of praise, does that
You froze.
shift at all maybe how you see yourself creatively, in that, like, oh, this is a thing that like everyone really really likes, and it's like, oh, okay, like I think for some folks it's like, oh, I can just, like, I should just keep doing more of this. And I think like your work is a bit varied, and then obviously you have Stray Dogs and Feral, but I guess like what was that kind of attention on a book that people really really liked, like what does that kind of do um to you in a way that maybe casts a shadow on some of the other stuff?
It gave me confidence to, like, the stuff that you responded to, the personal stuff, the stuff that was about, uh, uncomfortable stuff for me or for Tim, and just sort of, like, digging into the most personal, stuff that you're going through. It almost, uh it's like a bad thing for a workaholic to find out, right? Like,
Right.
oh, I can plumb the depths of my insecurities or my, you know, all these things that I hate about myself. I can pull those up, and that can be good for the work. That's great. Then I can just continue to only work, and I don't have to work on my on myself. But yeah, like, when I'm working on other stuff now, it feels like, I get the best results when it is me going and figuring out, like, how is this character like me? Um, or what have I gone through that sort of fits with what this character is going through, and how can I make this feel as personal as possible? That's sort of what I pulled from from Local Man, from working on that. And it sort of came down to there's a page in the second issue where Jack is investigating the murder of his arch nemesis, the Hodag, and he goes and sees the Hodag's mom in a trailer park where she lives. And it's just this scene. Tim wrote the whole thing. I don't think I changed a word of it, but he goes in there as he's asking, like investigative questions, and you expect it to be sort of like this salty, angry lady that's mad because the whole town thinks he killed her son, and he gets there and she's like, "Oh, I know you didn't do nothing," and they just have this sort of like sweet conversation, and then at the end, he hugs her, and there's this rumor in town that he, this it's deep Local Man spoilers, but this rumor that he hooked up with his teammate and she was married to the leader of their team, and he hugs this lady and she says like, thank you for fucking that fascist's wife. I hope you fuck her so hard. And it was like the perfect, it was a real Seeley moment where it's like gross and sweet and and unexpected. And I always look for opportunities to do stuff like that, where it's like, how can I do something that feels very personal, but also a little bit takes you off guard, but also comes from the heart, and that came from that.
Awesome. And then Stray Dogs happened.
Yeah.
Was that
before that?
Well, right. Stray Dogs happened before that, but I think, the
Stray
pitch
Dogs was happening the whole time we were making this.
Right. So walk me through that pitch, because I like when in that did you again like what was the light bulb moment again for you that was like, oh, okay, no, I know I've got something with this. This is the story. This is a story I need to tell. I'm putting it all out on the page here.
Yeah. That was, I've told this a lot of times, but basically I got the idea for the killer before anything else. I had this idea. I was watching a TV show and there was a serial killer in it, and all of a sudden he had a dog. And I asked, like, did he kill someone and take their dog? And my friends were like, who were paying closer attention, were like, no, that's just a dog he found. And I was like, well, you should have killed him. And, like, that's cool if he was a killer who collected dogs. And then I was like, oh, that's interesting. A killer who like kills people, and instead of taking like a piece of jewelry or like a lock of hair or something, he takes their dog. And that wasn't the point though, where I was like, this is something. It was, I sat there with it and sort of like thought about how would I tell that story? And would it be told from like the person who's kidnapped, who now is like, her dog is also there? Or is it from the point of view of like cops that are chasing this guy? They don't know what's happening, but dogs are disappearing. So then they're like, are they using like the chips to try and find, like none of that sounded exciting. But then like I said, I grew up into animation and into cartoons. I have a lot of younger brothers and sisters. And so I thought about Oliver and Company, and I thought, if it's Oliver and Company, but instead of them being thieves, instead of there being like a artful dodger that's trying to get them to steal, that they are kidnapped by a murderer. If it's Silence of the Lambs, but with Oliver and Company, that's something I haven't seen before, and that again, like, it fits with the things that I know how to do. And it's something that I could easily put together and make. And then I knew that I didn't want to draw it. I was still working full time making My Little Pony and I think Rick and Morty at the time, or Star Wars. Like I was doing, I was a full time comic book artist. And I knew I wanted to make it, but I wanted somebody else to draw it, and I wanted it to look like Don Bluth drew it. And then that's how I found Trish. And when I found Trish and she sent over like the first drawings of like Sophie and Rusty, that's when I was like, this is absolutely going to work. And then when the whole team got together and it gets in color and it looks like an animated, it's like there were several of those moments where you're like, oh, this is a thing. But yeah, it was like every step of the way, every person we put on that team, they would turn something in and it would be like, this is exactly what we're looking for. Great.
And So there was no hesitation on your part on the look of the book. That was is a crucial ingredient
Yeah,
to, you think,
that was the
it
reason
work.
to make the book. What was that it would look like that and that there hasn't been something like that, you know? I never wanna be just a person that's making another version of a thing if I can help it, you know? Like, I want it to look like it stands out, and part of that comes from, insecurity, you know? Like, I don't feel like there are certain guys who make comics and they just do like their run of Justice League, whatever, and they're like, I'm not worried about it. This is going to be my run of Justice League, and it's going to be great. But I always would be like, well, how could I make it so that they're all space aliens or they're all cows or something? Like, if there's some way to make this so it really stands out.
Mhm. Um, the response to the book was nuts.
Yeah.
What was that aspect of it like for you? Because this was something that I think, like, because in addition to the book itself, right? Like the variant covers that you guys were doing, a lot of retailers kind of came on board and really kind of rode that ship with you. What for you working, at that point, was still working full time doing the pony stuff and all that. Like, how was that kind of taste at success in that manner different?
Oh, it was wildly different. I had some experience with being a popular artist because the thing that regular comic fans don't understand about those My Little Pony comics is that there's this whole other world of like fandom and conventions and
Yep.
stuff like that where I had been going to, at that point for, 6, 7 years or whatever, had been going to shows and being treated like I was Jim Lee, you know? I get there, somebody picks me up at the airport, there's somebody in my car when I get in, they're giving me my schedule, they give me my per diem, like my appearance fee. So I was a little bit used to, like, being treated like I was
That
fancy, you know?
right.
But I didn't make that, like, I didn't invent My Little Pony, and so it was an entirely different thing to then have people, freaking out about a thing that Trish and I and Tone had made up, just, that was very, you would talk about a moment where I thought like, "Oh, I can," you know, "I have confidence in my ideas and the way that I'm doing things."
Sure.
That was the moment where it was just like, this my point of view has a value, like,
Mhm.
I thought, like, this should be about this, it's buddy. This should be about dogs, and it should look like this, and it should feel like this, and the audience was like, "We agree. This is
Mhm.
this is what this thing should be like."
What did you did any of the pony audience come on over for this? And like, what was their response?
A few of them. It's been a gradual, uh, transition. Like, the hardcores came right over, there are people who have bought all of my work since my first My Little Pony,
Mhm.
and those obviously, those folks showed up. But, the rest of them, I mean, it's still in the sphere of the thing that they like. Like, this is about
Right.
cartoon animals,
Yeah.
and, bronies are famously adults. And so and so it's just a matter of, like, if they're on board to see, like, something scary that stars cartoon animals or something a little
Right.
more adult that stars cartoon animals, then we can bring them over. And I still do My Little Pony convention. I got back from one last night.
Oh, nice.
So I'm still, continuing to push into that audience and sell that audience on Stray Dogs and Feral, and it's not impossible, but it's much easier to sell than ponies.
Gi- given the style of the art though, and the situations that you put these poor animals into,
Yeah.
do you what when writing things like tension and drama, and then obviously some of the shock and all that stuff, like how do you make sure that, like, are there rules for yourself that you have to make sure that like you don't go too far, but like do you have to go a little extra harder because the art is so cute? Like how do you manage that aspect of it but still be able to kind of tell the deep level story that you're wanting to tell?
Yeah. We don't have any hard and fast rules, but it is a balance. Um, Part of the thing that you get with those dogs and those cats looking so classic and so
Mhm.
innocent and sweet is that already the people care for them more than they would care for them if they were drawn like a regular cat. You
Mm.
know, if it was just drawn like a realistic cat and it was a story about them or a realistic dog, it's the Scott McCloud thing. Like it's easier to look at a cartoon, a smiley face, and imbue that with your feelings or your emotions. And it's easier to look at a cartoon dog and go like, "That's just like my dog that's like that." Where if it looks too specific, then you're like, "That's not my dog. My dog looks different from that." So already they like them more, like they're more invested in them, and then they also because they're familiar with Rover Dangerfield and Bolt and, Balto, like, they are not expecting them to be mauled or murdered or, you know, like, or
Right.
be in any real like, there's danger in those movies, but they're G-rated movies, and so they know that there's when you see a dog like that, you feel safe, and
Right.
you can use that as a trick in making horror comics the same as you would use a page turn, or you would use, like a to be continued or change scenes when you think something's about to happen, diversion. We use that hopefully to the correct effect, when it's important. It is a balance because then also you don't want it to just be like, uh, I you don't want it to be
You don't want
just
to
like
be you don't want to be
pages.
Tony Fleecs, the sadistic guy who just kills cats and dogs
It's
all the
the whole
time.
issue where it's just like, "That was sickening. That was tough to read." Just, it looks like Juan Jose Rip, it's just drew every gut, every, body part of these cats, so
I mean,
sometimes
not for nothing. That's the one shot I think we need. We need the Juan Jose Rip
yeah,
feral one shot.
I would love it. Uh, but yeah, I don't know if the audience would go along with me. Whenever people go, like I remember in the early 2000s or whatever, they would be like, "Oh, it's just torture porn," and I was like, "Yeah, it was scary though too," like
Right.
there's still a skill in making these things.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm grosser than a lot of my friends.
All right. So, well, let's jump into feral because I think like the interesting thing for me, outside of just the obvious flip, right, cats instead of dogs, the type of horror in this book feels different, right? Because like you said before that horror is scarier when characters have less control. But what makes like how does the idea of introducing rabies and um some of the other things that you've got going on there, why is that important to be different in feral than necessarily what you were doing in Stray Dogs?
Well, in Stray Dogs, besides betrayal, like
Mm-hmm.
there was no way that a dog was going to be on the other. Like the dogs were all the good guys, and we would have like interpersonal problems. I think he's settled down.
It's fine.
But none of the dogs were going to try and attack the other dogs,
Okay.
like that was never in any of the outlines or any of the, even anything that we'd ever thought of. Like these are nice Disney dogs that live together in a house. And so when we're switching it around, the idea of, the idea of zombies in general, what's
Right.
so scary about them is that it's your neighbors that are trying to kill you, like it's your mother or whatever. Like that's what's so frightening. And so like already you get a different dynamic from that. And also it's sort of in the way that cats and dogs are different. Like dogs will get in fights and they'll play around and stuff, but there's certain cats that you can't let around other cats, because will try to kill them. Like I've never heard. I've never been woken up in the middle of the night by dogs fighting in my yard, but on many occasions I've been woken up by cats trying to literally kill each other in my backyard. Um, so yeah, planning Feral and coming up with Feral was a lot about wanting to keep the flavor of Stray Dogs, but do something that was built differently and could go in many different directions and definitely be a completely different story. And
Right.
so when we landed on Rabies and the idea of these cats can do these cats can then become the the can go from being the good guy to becoming the bad guy. And
Mhm.
that was fun because of how sad it is, because the same way that we're breaking people's hearts with these dogs where you fall in love with them and you don't expect anything bad to happen and then something bad happens, we make you love these characters and then we go, well, now he wants to eat them,
Mm.
And so I think it's cheating, but like
Sure.
it's an easier track for us to get there than it would be in like The Walking Dead, where you have to do a lot of work to make people like these characters and really get
Right.
on board with them. So you maybe have to do like 20 issues before you can make them turn. Where in Feral, you see him right away and you're just like, oh, look at this little guy. He's got a patch on his eye. He's so cute. He's grumpy, and then, so we can do it in 4 issues
Yeah.
instead, which, worked out for us. And it would have worked out if the book was not successful, because then we could get a whole story in before we had to wrap it up too.
Sure. As far as any of the turns and stuff go that you've done so far, is that all stuff that you saw in advance, or did any of it happen kind of as you were going along, given the nature that this is an ongoing, as opposed to something with a you could only get done in a couple of issues.
We haven't had anything happen necessarily yet that was like a real 180 from what we had planned in advance.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I think the cats that have turned out to be bad guys were sort of like set up that way to
Mhm.
be bad guys. But I do get ideas for like, big character turns as we're going along that sort of propel the thing. Cause this is like Stray Dogs, when we started, it was all the way outlined, it was
Right.
like beat for beat, issue for issue, all the way tightly outlined. And this, by way of being an ongoing, is much looser in its shape. Like I know how it ends, and I know all the places they go, and I know what's going on in the world, and when certain things are going to happen. But there's a lot more room for improvisation and coming up with stuff. So the characters, so far when we introduce them, they've gone in the direction we thought they were going to go.
Mhm.
Uh, but there is room for us to get down the road on one of them and then just be like, wait a second, what if this, what if we did this?
Yeah.
And there are also ones where we brought the character in and we didn't necessarily know that they were going to be anything. And then where they're headed turns into like my favorite thing, or the thing where I know,
Mhm.
you know, that people are going to be furious about, or they're going to be happy about.
Right. Uh, are there any of the cats that you are surprised became fan favorites, or do you feel like no, I've engineered it this way?
No,
They're all
I feel like I have no idea what the fans are gonna like or not like in that regard. Like I
Mhm.
write them all. I really put myself in all their little places, and and I know like what their problems are and what their failings are and where their heart is, and I write them like that. And then I put them out there, and then I read the comments, and I'm just like, "Oh, no, they hate they hate Phoebe, or they like, everybody hates Elsie, or some contingent hates Lord." Like, I feel like, more people hate these cats than love them, at least in the they come back to read these cats that they hate. I hope they continue to come back and read them forever.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I think it's just like people pick their favorite, and then whoever's coming up against them becomes like their op. But yeah, everybody has a band of haters according to the YouTube comments and the the Blue Sky replies and whatever.
Amazing. Uh, the start of the next arc that we're kind of here to talk about starts with a silent issue.
Yeah.
Uh, outside of being a giant GI Joe fan,
Yeah.
what was the impetus for this one?
Well, one of the things I love about making an ongoing comic is, and sort of, has always been my dream, like, uh, is being able to experiment and have fun and do like, cool little one-off issues and, having the runway to be able to do that. We first did it in issue 6 of this book, where at the end of the first arc, one of the characters had been turned, and I wanted to do just like a full POV, like those cat. We had seen those TikTok videos of somebody putting a GoPro on their cat and just letting him go tear off. And we were like, let's do something that's like that. And so it's fully POV, like it's just backgrounds. That issue was mostly just tone. And then, um, but we got to do inside this cat's head as it was sort of like losing its mind and succumbing to the rabies. Um, and so then it became, that was so much fun and people got a kick out of it and really responded to it. And we were like, what else can we do? Like what's the next time we can do something like that? And it didn't end up being until this point, we had introduced this character named Ghost, who's deaf. And that was just because I have had friends with deaf cats before, and I've had dogs that are blind and deaf, and I just wanted to have that in the dynamic, like, like, I like having cats that have different physical stuff, but also different, like personality stuff, just to keep things interesting. And we put Ghost in there, and we just really fell in love with like this, having this little guy be in there. And he's sort of like a Snake Eyes, he's just silent, and he moves around. He hasn't been the star of anything, but he shows up in there for a couple pages here and there, and you get to see him, and people like him, and we love this character. And so just when we were like developing it and putting it together, it was like, well, we should do a one shot with him called Ghost Story and have it be a silent issue. And then it was Dennis Culver, who was our editor on this book, that was like, we're sort of plotting out the arc and figuring out the stories. And he was like, well, it should be right there at 21, because that's where you do your silent issues. I was like, oh yeah,
it's just comics law.
That's good. Yeah, I hope it becomes a law.
Yeah.
This is my first first book to hit 21, so I can hold everyone else accountable that doesn't do it now at this point.
That's it. He's like, look, I've done it. Where's yours? Come on,
gotta
make it happen.
Doing this. But yeah.
Well, so then.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say. So then, what goes into scripting a silent issue, right? Because like now I have to imagine even more so having to make sure that you can control, things like clarity and the pacing and emotion, obviously without dialogue. And so like, is that something where like you lean, like, when talking to Trish about this, like, does the script become more of an outline and like Trish like go for it, or are there things that you are definitely wanting to make sure kind of get hit?
No, the script was quicker to write because I didn't have to write dialogue, but
sure.
It took a little more time to write because it was figuring out like beat to beat. We didn't have dialogue to glue stuff together to,
right.
Like sometimes if you're having somebody go into a different room, you don't have to show them how they got there, how they left the other room, because you can just paste over that with dialogue. But the way we make Feral and Stray Dogs is different than the way anybody else makes comics, in a complicated and confusing way. But I knew that the emotional stuff was going to work because Trish is a genius at that.
Yep.
I knew that the backgrounds, because this whole issue is like introducing this new scenario, this new place that these characters are in. I knew that was going to work because Tone's been doing these backgrounds for us this whole time, and especially in the Pet City arc, just previously, like he went berserk. Like Pet City is just like every shelf is just like packed with products and dog food and cat food and all this stuff, and he never slacks on it. Like he's a lunatic. Like he just, you see in some people's art when they stop when they're like, we got to keep moving and it'll be a shelf and you won't see anything on it, like he doesn't ever. So I knew that part was covered, but the way we do this book is I write it. And then because Tone draws backgrounds and Trish draws the characters, I will also do thumbnails for every issue. So I'm handing them a script and then I'm handing them thumbnails, and then Tone draws the backgrounds over top of the thumbs. And then we send that to Trish, and it has removed all my crappy background scratches, and it just has my crappy cats and dogs
Cat sketches.
in there. And then so she goes over and does that. So this one, the script making it was almost the same, but it was a lot more once I got to the thumbnails, moving stuff around and changing stuff, because it was like, no, the story works better if it goes like this, or this adds a better rhythm, or so it was sort of a more art heavy issue than a normal one, but mostly it came together the same as the others.
So let's set this arc up for folks who are listening. Like I said, this is the kind of the next big arc, but also a really good jumping, I would say a good jumping on point for folks. For it's one of those things where I'm always a firm believer of kind of just jump in whenever and work your way backwards. That's how I did it. That's how most everyone else who loves comics does it. But good accessible jumping on points are important. Yeah. And this one, while being a silent issue, a little unconventional, but helps kind of set what's to come. So why don't you set the table for us, Tony?
Yeah. So Farrell, if you're just a Let's Talk Comics listener and you have no idea who I am or who Farrell is, Farrell is the story of these indoor cats who get lost in the woods during a huge rabies outbreak, and they go through trials and tribulations, and they've had losses and they've had victories, but they spent the last 7 or so issues in our Dawn of the Dead. Like they found themselves inside of a pet store, which you would think would be like the perfect place for cats to wait out like a zombie rabies apocalypse. But of course, as things always do, things went horribly wrong. And so this is them now. They're in a new location. They've been captured by, spoilers for Farrell, they've been captured by Animal Control, CDC, and they've been taken into this sort of makeshift laboratory in the middle of all this rabies hell. So it's sort of we're exploring, we're showing a lot more of what's been going on in the world outside, and we're sort of getting into that. While the cats never understand what the people are saying or have any idea what's going on, because cats don't speak human at all, the reader is going to get to know a lot more about what's been happening, the extent of this thing. Is it affecting other animals? Is it affecting people? Like we sort of get into all of that this arc and what's being done about it. And I always said, like, people would be like, well, is there going to be a cure for this? Are they going to, are they going to get better? And I'm always just like, well, if it is, like, it's not going to be the cats that figure it out, like they are not scientists. But in this one, we're going to show the scientists who are trying to figure it out and sort of like give a little bit of that, give a peek into that for the readers. Obviously, the book's going to keep going after this arc or after this storyline, but we at least wanted to, I feel like 20 issues in, we wanted to say, like, here's some of the stuff that you've probably been wondering about. Because we've had to do it in, like, they walk past a TV and the TV's on and we get a little bit of information out there. Somebody turns on a radio, or they walk past a sign that says, like, we're evacuating this whole area. But we wanted to be able to give a little bit more information on that stuff in this one. And also, classic, like, experimentation, mad scientist, reanimator, Section 9, like these kind of like institutional horror stories. We wanted to be able to do our take on one of those too. So it's not just we're showing what the people are up to. It's like our cats are in trouble because of what the people are up to.
Right.
And so, yeah.
Nice. And so this issue and like this arc kind of really moves a lot of that like you said, forward. And like I said, for those listening who are feral readers, or not, a nice big fun thing happens in this.
Yeah.
That I know that Tony has been very, very excited about, that we obviously don't want to spoil here, but if you're putting 2 and 2 together, maybe you get it.
It's the only thing we could possibly have done.
Right. So if you've listened to this episode, which we tried to spell it out for you, but we're not going to spoil it. But Tony, for you getting to do this special thing that we're not talking about,
yeah,
what does that mean for you? Because it feels like this is it is kind of a special moment, but is it something that you ever thought you would have done? And I know it's gonna be really hard to talk about without saying what it is, but I'm really curious to kind of get your thoughts and emotions on doing it.
Yeah, for sure. This book comes out on March 25th. So on March 25th, come back here and re-listen to this, and you'll be like, oh, okay, right.
Now I get it.
No, this was not something initially that like I said, like some of this has been improvisational, or like we get to a thing, we go through a couple story arcs and we start to map stuff out, and then we go like, oh, interesting, we could go this way. And this was one of those. This was like, oh, we could go this way, and that's fun and it makes sense. And it's the same way I said, like, when I come onto a book, I have to figure out the most different way to do it. Like, this is that. Like, this is a big surprise thing, a crossover type thing, but it's not going to be like any, I think, that you've seen before. So that was very exciting to me, and sort of like the implications of having something sort of fun and commercial that we could do in this very, like, it's just a regular story that's happening in our book, like it's just like a month to month, there are highs and there are lows and there are big surprises and stuff, but being able to do something very comic booky, but also have it feel like this fits into this world, and it fits into the way that we make this comic, and it fits into like the types of limitations that animals have that we've been working with in this comic, and even going back to Stray Dogs. It felt really special and really fun. And also it sort of gave us an opportunity to do all the stuff we like to do with, the horror covers and just doing like different kind of stuff. And I feel like this is just has to sound like nonsense to somebody that only you and I know. And astute, listeners.
They got it.
But yeah, it definitely felt special. This is the 5th anniversary of Trish and I making comics at Image. In this month, actually, probably in like a week. And so it felt like this would be the time to really do something big and fun, and hopefully, just like commercially, when you're 20 issues into an ongoing series, it's good to have a trick up your sleeve that you can go like, come on, check this out if you haven't. When you get, hopefully when word gets out about issue 21, when you pick up that book, it's not just that it's a silent issue that you can read really quick and get to the big fun surprise. It's also in the beginning of it, in the front, there's we do a really comprehensive previously on that, you've never read one before. You can know what's happening in Feral right away. And also Image is putting out the Feral the Image first issue the same month, and then Feral Volume 4 comes out that same month. So we tried to make it as perfect a situation for new readers, and as perfect the celebration, like I said, for this sort of 5 years at Image.
Yeah. I would argue that silent issues actually take longer to read. I feel like they end up being more immersive,
right?
Than if done right, or end up being more immersive than maybe your typical issue. So
I'm just thinking about the complaints that I will get, but yeah, the point of them is that you're supposed to be able to really dive into them,
correct,
look into all the corners and the backgrounds and stuff. Like, you've read it, right? Like
right? Yeah. Oh yeah.
So you see that like there's more stuff going on than than just what this cat's
And
seeing and what this you're like there's a lot of clues dropped in this thing and a lot of you know, showing you what the outside world is getting up to, and this cat is just trying to survive, and we're in his point of view, but in the background we can see all this other stuff happening while he's doing that.
yeah. I want to talk a little bit about Tony, the creator, but also, um, the independent creator, but also, I mean that by saying like you've done a lot to build a great rapport, not only with readers, but also comic shops. And like you did a huge cross country tour to really kind of get out there and press the flash and do all that. Why is that important to you? And why do you feel that that's important to the overall process of what we do?
Well, uh the retailers are the ones that actually sell the comics for me. Like,
Sure.
as much as I do these and I go
Mhm.
and I tell people about my books, like, I watched the view counts and I'm like, "Well, if that many people bought it, I wouldn't have a job," you know? Like, so, uh, like, I can only do so much from here to get the word out there about my book, but every town has however many comic shops, and all those people are like the trusted, source for what's new and
Yep.
what's good. And definitely me being somebody who came in sort of backwards from the way people used to, where it used to
Mhm.
be, Kirkman Manifesto style. You go, you do your you do your couple years and hopefully have some big hit at Marvel or DC, and then you go and make your own thing and you bring that audience with you to Image. I sort of did it backwards, where I went and had a big hit at Image, and then hopefully bring some of those people if I go and do stuff in Marvel and DC, and hopefully get more people to
Right.
follow me back to Image. I'm trying to do like a double triple reverse. But uh, part of why Stray Dogs was a hit was because a retailer friend of mine was like, "You gotta take this and show it to retailers face to face. Tell them what it is, because otherwise you will get passed over. Like, people will see it and they won't know what it is, and they'll
Mhm.
order a couple of them. And if you don't get good numbers on the first issue, sometimes that can be that. Like,
Right.
it's hard to build. If you don't have a foundation to build on." And so I did. I went and saw retailers and I showed them Stray Dogs. I made a preview copy of the first issue that I took to a retailer event, to Comics Pro, and I walked them through it. I basically just said, like, "This is my book. Here's what happens in it. Like, this is what it looks like.
Mhm.
Take this for for your own." And from there, that's why we had all those retailer covers on that first issue, and that's why there was like that sort of base of support
Mhm.
for the first issue of Stray Dogs, which didn't sell like crazy, but it had retailers who could go to their readers and say, and they would
Mhm.
say like, "What's this?" They could say like, "Oh, pick it up, you'll like that."
Yeah.
Whereas, if it was just any number of books that comes out on a Wednesday and a reader says, "What's this?" the retailer would be like, "Oh, it's really nice."
Right. Yeah.
So, which is which just being from Image, like, I feel like I've talked about Image on this podcast less than I've talked about it on every other podcast I've ever been on. But having that Image logo on it gets me further than, that takes you half the way already, because
Sure.
people trust Image. They trust Eric's eye as a curator, and they go like, "Well, I know it's at least gonna be at a certain level." So a certain level of buy-in is already there just with the
Mhm.
logo being on it. But because I like to make stuff that's weird, and because I like to, I want to be able to make stuff that feels personal to me. I rely on those retailers to be the ones who go, "This, you'll dig this. This is like a thing that you like, or fits right in with the stuff that you read." And so I make it a point to make myself available to retailers. And we went on that tour. We went across the whole country and back to 50 plus stores, and that was just from being in touch with these retailers and people in, the middle of the South or, somewhere up in, New England or whatever,
Mhm.
just going like, "Hey, do you ever make it out this way?" And the answer is no, I don't, like, but I can figure, like we figured out a way to get to all those places to sort of keep those people that were already in, like had a toe into the Tony Fleece business, keep
Yep.
them on Team Tony Fleece and
Mhm.
build readers at their shop face to face. Go see their readers
Right.
and like there are shops close to here that if I go and do a signing every new issue that comes, not every new issue, but like every new series that comes out or every, couple of arcs or whatever, just make myself a regular, my numbers at those shops go up, like their hold file pulls go up. And
Yep.
that all as an independent creator, like that's sort of what it all comes down to is just like, are these shops selling enough of my book that I don't have to get a job, a real job.
Right. Wait, did you have any takeaways maybe from an audience standpoint as you were going across the country that maybe you wish more creators knew or understood?
Um, no, I mean, some of it, there was good stuff and there's bad stuff. There's some, like
Sure.
some of it is because we were also driving across the country, right? We were we were driving on election day. And
Oh,
so you sort of go into different places and you just go like, "Oh, it's different here. This isn't,
yep.
like I'm not in my bubble here," you know?
Right.
Um, and you sort of realize that that even though we're making it personal and we're making it like we're making the personal effort to go and shake hands with people and, engage people, at a certain point, it's all just, economics for these shops where, like no matter how good of pals we are and no matter how
Sure.
much we went and got pizza or whatever, like uh, if we're not making a book that they can sell every month, like they gotta, cut their orders to make room for, new stuff that's coming out or to, like, it's hard to get a new reader onto an issue 21, like it's hard
Mhm.
to say like, hey, you've taken a pass on this for the past 2 years, but now I think is the time you're going to want to jump in, which is the, how it works. Like people see, if you stick around, you're bound to break resistance. Like people
Right.
see that book over and over again, and they're like, "This thing is still coming out. Let me check this out."
Yeah.
But it's harder to be on the shelf and be there for people to check out. So I did notice that going across the whole country, and then realizing that like you still have to do the thing, like you still have to make this book compelling and make it interesting. You don't get to rest on your laurels. It wasn't a sort of like a way to give myself an easier time. It was more just like this on top of that is how we can
Right.
keep this thing rolling.
Love it. Tony, you've been so gracious with your time today. I appreciate it. For those of you listening in, make sure you go tell your retailer about Feral 21. Believe me, you're gonna want a copy and not a second printing copy. You're gonna want a first copy. You're gonna want a first printing copy.
Hey, you
So
don't catch FOMO off of this.
that's right. So make sure you go tell your retailer you need a few copies, just to hand out to people. That's the best way to get people into comics. At least that's what I found. I will always for books that I think are easy to kind of get people in. I always will try and get an extra copy or two just to be like, oh, I read this, I liked it. You check it out, but not my copy. My copy stays with me. Uh, so make sure you go do that. Follow Tony Fleecs all around the internet. He's in a whole bunch of different places. Instagram, Blue Sky, the works,
TikTok, yeah, everywhere.
TikTok. There's a bunch of new Feral t-shirts. Tony's got a threadless storefront open, or if it's easier for you, you can head on over to the Image storefront there. Lots of really cool Feral designs to definitely check out and wear to your Feral 21 launch party.
Yeah, and
Silent launch party. It's going to be one of those things where everyone's got headphones on and they're they're reading the book in a circle together.
like a landmark.
Yeah. But Tony, man, I appreciate it. I hope this was I hope the dream lived up to the expectation.
Boy, I'm satisfied. I can't believe it. Everything I hoped it would be.
Amazing, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.